Okay, so good morning, everybody. I hope everyone had a restful weekend. I know it's going to be a little bit different this week, but as far as the things that we are going to accomplish in class, it shouldn't really change all that much. We're still going to do some YouTube videos. We'll have some notes. We'll have some assignments, but everything that we do or would have done in class is totally can easily be accomplished at home. So I designed the course that way at the beginning of the year, just in case something like this would happen. So we'll just kind of be business as usual. And as always, if you have questions or you need to get in contact with me, I'll be here at school just like normal. And you can get in touch with me here. And then even once the school day is over, if you need to send me a message on Schoology, I'll be able to get back with you as soon as I can. So I'm here to serve you guys, and you guys are my first priority, and I'll help you in any way that I can. All right. So with that being said, let's rock and roll with today's lesson. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of the timeline where we left off. In 1764, we had the Sugar Act, which is a British foreign tax on molasses. And then a little bit later, in March of 1765, two new acts were put upon the colonies. One is the Stamp Act, which is a tax on printed material, and the other is a Quartering Act, which required the colonists to house and feed British soldiers. And if you'll remember, the reason why these taxes are being imposed on the colonies at this point is because the French and Indian War was over. The British Crown needed money to be able to pay for the war debts, and they thought the colonies should foot their fair share of the bill. So the American colonists are not at all pleased with this and resist. And in some of the forms they resist are through non-importation agreements, which is essentially just a boycott. The colonies are going to unite together through their committees of correspondence and communicate and agree not to purchase British goods. And so you begin to see homespun clothes being made in the colonies. You begin to see spinning bees, and the colonies begin to unite. So it's really one of the first ways that the people of the colonies, not within a colony, but all of the colonies, unite together. Now, in order to enforce these things, an organization formed which would sometimes use violence in their colonial protests, such as the Sons of Liberty. They sometimes took the law into their own hands to enforce non-importation agreements against violators by ransacking houses, tar and feathering tax collectors and unpopular officials. And eventually, at this point, I would normally ask, how successful do you think these non-importation agreements and the Sons of Liberty were? Well, they were actually fairly effective. England was hard hit. America had bought about 25% of all British exports, and about 50% of British shipping was devoted to American trade. So many merchants, manufacturers, and shippers suffered, and loud demands converged on Parliament for them to repeal these things. It wasn't necessarily the colonials, the colonists, that were able to change the minds of the Parliament, but the wealthy merchants and businessmen of England who were hard hit by the non-importation agreements that had the loudest voice in Parliament. So after a pretty stormy debate in Parliament in 1766, they grudgingly repealed the Stamp Act. So in doing so, the colonists feel like they won a victory. But essentially, in the same breath that Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, they also passed the Declaratory Act. The Declaratory Act, which reaffirms Parliament's right to bind the colonies in all cases whatsoever. So essentially what this does is it draws a line in the sand, if you will. Like Great Britain says, you are our colonies, we are your mother, you are going to do what we say. So it really defined the constitutional principle that Great Britain is not going to yield, and that their power is absolute over the North American colonies. So the Declaratory Act goes a long way toward setting the stage for even more confrontation. And then that's just kind of giving you an idea of how how the colonists and the British are getting along at this point. But at no point are the colonists saying, hey, let's go and we need to have a war and be independent. This is, the 1760s. Got a ways to go before that. That being said, enter this gentleman. His name is Charles Townshend. Charles Townshend, Champagne Charlie. A lot of people refer to him as Champagne Charlie Townshend, who's a great orator. He delivered brilliant speeches while in Parliament, typically while intoxicated. So, but in the year 1767, our pal Champagne Charlie persuaded Parliament to pass the Townshend Acts. The Townshend Acts. Basically, these are just a series of taxes, light import duties on glass, lead, paper, paint, and tea. So they're taxes on glass, lead, paper, paint, and tea. Now Townshend made the tax on tea, unlike the Stamp Act, it was an indirect customs. So it's not like, so these are indirect taxes. The Stamp Act were direct taxes. You pay your tax, you get the stamp put on your paper. These are indirect taxes. These are not paid by individual customers, but they're paid at the seaports. So colonists would still see these taxes as taxation without representation. The most irksome of these Townshend Act taxes was the tax on tea. It was at that time estimated about 1 million people drank a cup of tea or several cups of tea twice a day. And these new revenues that were going to be generated by Charles Townshend's Townshend Act were going to be used to pay the salaries of royal judges and royal governors in America. But the Americans regarded Townshend's tax as just another attempt to enchain them in taxation without representation. So, once again, immediately the non-importation agreements were quickly revived against the Townshend Acts, but they were less effective than those devised against the Stamp Act this time, because the colonists took these taxes much less seriously because they were light, for one thing, and they were indirect. People did not directly see themselves having to see that stamp put on a piece of paper, and because it was all paid at the seaport, which simply just made prices a little bit higher. But even at that, the tax was so light that even the smuggled tea that John Hancock was bringing in, especially in Massachusetts, was more expensive than the taxed tea. So British officials were being faced with a breakdown in law and order as a result, and so they began to send troops to the colonies in order to prevent this. One of the largest seaports that they sent soldiers to was in Boston. So a clash there was going to be inevitable with the presence of these redcoat soldiers. And eventually, on the evening of March the 5th, 1770, a crowd of some 60 townspeople set upon a squad of about 10 redcoat soldiers. When I say set upon, they were upset with these guys. They did not want them there. The Quartering Act allowed them to sleep in the homes of colonial men and women. They many of them did not have the same types of religious beliefs. Many of them are foul-mouthed soldiers. Many of them were not paid regularly by the king, and so they had to get jobs, which caused competition for what jobs that did exist in the Boston seaport. So they were just seen as a general nuisance and were unwanted in Boston. So on March the 5th, 1770, people were standing outside the collections house, which was being guarded by these soldiers, and basically started taunting them, throwing snowballs at them, rocks, oyster shells, and eventually clubs were being thrown at them. And when one of them was hit by a club and was knocked down, his weapon discharged, which then led the other soldiers to fire their weapons into the crowd, killing or wounding 11. I'm not going to say innocent citizens because they were, throwing clubs, which you could kill somebody with that. And one of the citizens who died is an African American man named Crispus Attucks, who many historians say is one of the first um, casualties of the American Revolution. But you see this is an engraving that was done by Paul Revere, this photograph. And if you look at it, you see the evil, scowling redcoat soldiers firing into a crowd of poor, helpless, innocent people. And this is just simply not the case. This is propaganda that was turned out by the Sons of Liberty. However, it was very successful in that it was able to be published throughout the colonies, and it aroused a feeling of distrust toward the British government, and it went a long way toward uniting the colonies together. So, I'll stop there for the day. It's a pretty good amount of time for video. So let me end the show. So if you have questions about anything we talked about today, make sure you keep it up with your outlines. Read your book. These are all things that you can do, and we'll stay on course, and we'll keep working on our way toward the American Revolution. And I'm here for you. If you have any questions or you need me, don't hesitate to shoot me a message. And I will keep your eye on Schoology for, the folders are going to stay the same. If you have an assignment, do your assignment. If you have notes, just kind of keep your eye peeled for a YouTube video, and we'll get through it together. And I miss you guys, and I hope everything goes well with you. So I'll see you later. Bye-bye.